What's up? How you doing? Here we are, evening. Street lights are on. In my time, when I was a kid, that meant go home. It's supper time. Now, doesn't mean anything. It just means it's getting dark out. So, I was thinking today about a pain medicine that was pretty popular when I was a kid, and you don't hear about it that much anymore. Anacin. I was a big fan of Anacin. I thought it was the best, that nothing was close to it. If anybody said, hey, I don't know, I have a headache, or my arm hurts, or I don't know, my back hurts, I would always recommend Anacin. And it's not like I had insider information. It's just that they had a good advertising campaign. Maybe that guy from Bewitched came up with it, I don't know. But in my time, when I was growing up, Anacin commercials were all over the place on television. They would always say, hey, take some Anacin. And even the name Anacin sounded like it had, some horsepower. A little water here. Now, I don't know if it had anything to do with, had a girl in my class. Her name was not Anacin, but it was Anastasia. And she was kind of like the teacher's pet. If a teacher wanted something answered, she would say, anybody? Anastasia? And Anastasia would give the answer. From first to third grade, I had her in my class, and she was kind of like the go-to person if the teacher had a question, or if she wanted her to read something. She would say, Anastasia, you want to read that next paragraph? I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but I was a big fan of Anacin, like promoting it. And when it came on, I was always like, what is the point of all the other things like Tylenol, Bayer, all that other stuff, when we have Anacin? But Anacin is not that popular anymore. I'm pretty sure it's still around, but I can't remember the last time I saw a commercial promoting Anacin. Anacin. So, yeah. Now, I don't even have Anacin. And then I remember when I was really little, St. Joseph's little aspirins, I think they're 81 milligrams, and whoever came up with this 81 number, I mean, there's got to be a reason why it's 81 milligrams for a baby aspirin. You never see any aspirin, like 80 milligrams, which would make more sense, or 75 milligrams, or 85 milligrams. 81. And they had that in my time. I don't know now. I haven't had St. Joseph's baby aspirin in a few years now, but they had like an orange flavor, and my mother would, my father usually would grab the little bottle, and he would say, take some aspirin. And aspirin has become the universal name for painkiller. A lot of these painkillers like Tylenol or Advil or Aleve, they don't have aspirin. But in my house, they refer to all of those as aspirin. They would say, take an aspirin, and they meant Tylenol, or, Aleve or something. But, so anyway, they had the St. Joseph's 81 milligram baby aspirin, and I loved the flavor. So I remember one time, no one was around, so I found the bottle, and I know, for me, if something said keep out of reach of children, I had to get into that product. So nothing, even when I was really little, the child-proof stuff never kept me out. So I remember one time I was in the dining room, had this long radiator by the window, those old-fashioned ones that the water would run through, and they would heat the water up. Then all of a sudden the heat would radiate off of the metal, the iron, cast iron. So I was sitting on that when it was cool, and I was eating the St. Joseph's aspirins, many of them, like it was candy. I'd put it on my tongue one at a time. I'd, back and forth. I'd liquefy it, and there was a sense of satisfaction from the flavor. I must have had, I don't know, 10 of them, but I didn't have any ulcers or any kind of situation, so nothing happened. But you never know. I mean, 10 times 81 is 810, and that's a good dose for an adult. But that's what I did that time. I remember sitting in the dining room there, and I was just eating them like M&Ms. I only did that once, and then I understood that if it said keep out of reach of children, take that seriously. But yeah, like they make them taste so good for the benefit of the child when he really is sick, that the child, like myself back then, wishes that they even had it when they weren't sick. So like I said, I had about 10 of them that night, or that day. It wasn't night yet, it was day. And then another thing that I remember, when I was a kid, we would develop a cough or something, or sore throat or something like that, and we would go to the pediatrician, and my father would say, he's got a cough, and the pediatrician would prescribe for a cough this really, really good tasting grape cough medicine, only by prescription. So he would sit there with a sloppy handwriting, and he would write it out, and I would look at it, and it looked like shorthand to me. I couldn't tell what he said or what he wrote. And I'd go to the pharmacist with my father, and he'd give me the medicine, and we'd go home, and my father would pour it in a tablespoon, and I'd drink it, and it was very satisfying. But when I had a sore throat, he would give us penicillin, but the penicillin came in back then they were all glass. It was a glass jar, like bottle, and the glass jar was brown, and it was thick, like literally you could throw it across the street, it wouldn't break. It was a thick glass, and inside was the best tasting antibiotic that I've ever had in my life. It was pink, and it tasted amazing. I could not see. I don't want to drink it too fast because the doctor would over-explain that you can't have more than your dose because you're wasting it, he said, and it's not good for you. So you have to spread it out and take the proper amount for 10 days. Otherwise, it will not work. Take too much at the beginning, and then you won't have enough, and then some of the bacteria will survive and then mutate into a stronger form that's resistant to that kind of drug, and then you get even more sick. So we knew all that, so we were very careful, and we enjoyed taking that medicine. I want to tell them, why don't you make a beverage without the penicillin but with that flavoring, and it would be a big hit. And then at the end, once I would finish the 10-day regimen, I would take the bottle and try and get every little drop out of it, just whatever, even an atom. If an atom fell out, I would get it. But it was delicious. It was delicious. I don't know if they still make that for kids, but yeah, I remember going up to the pharmacy and handing them the prescription, and I couldn't wait to get home. And it was even better when you would take that and have it nice and cold. I mean, it was always in the refrigerator, but it just gave it an extra 10 points on the 1 to 100 thing. Scale of 1 to 100, it was 100, but then, being cold, it was 110. Yeah. And my pediatrician, I had two. They were in the same office, same, it was a big house. It was one of those big houses that they bought, and they converted it into like a clinic for children, pediatrics. So we would go there, and one guy was the older doctor who had a lot of experience, and then you had the younger doctor who was a few years out of medical school. And it depended on the schedule, but sometimes I would get the older guy, sometimes I would get the younger guy. One time I had poison ivy, and I remember it was either a late Saturday or something. It was like, yeah, I think it was the weekend, but it was a late Saturday. And I called up, somebody called up, I didn't call up, somebody called up the doctor's office, and they said, is anybody there? Bring I think my father, somebody said, bring my son in, has poison ivy. It might have even been me. I think maybe I called. And they had an appointment with the older doctor, and he was on the second floor. It's ironic, the young guy was on the first floor. The old guy, they made him walk all the way to the top. So I went in there, and I was bad. Whole face, eyes were closing, everywhere. It was like, it felt like somebody beat me with a leather strap, and, my whole body broke out. So he looked at me and he goes, wow, he goes, that's, so this was in the 8th grade. I ended up going to the pediatrician. And I didn't know that there was anything you can do about it. I thought he was just going to say, well, 10 days and you'll be fine. But he goes, I'll give you something, right? So I said, oh, good. So he wrote out a prescription. And I went up to the pharmacy and I started using it, and immediately, and when I say immediately, within 4 or 5 hours, I looked in the mirror and I could see a big difference. Everything was like shrinking and shrinking. And then I did it a few more times, and by the next day, I looked in the mirror and there was a huge difference. Like the poison ivy on my face especially was disappearing rapidly. And I wrote down that name. I said, I got to memorize it, just keep it in my memory. So next time something like this happens, usually what would happen is I would go to the doctor and they would say to me, nothing we can give you. Put on some calamine lotion. That crap doesn't work at all. Calamine. I think I'm saying it wrong. I know it's not chamomile. Calamine. Well, it's close to that. I know. I just right now. Calamine. Anyway, it's that pink nonsense. Remember one time, I went to the doctor and he goes, yeah, calamine lotion. And I said, oh, wow, this has got to be something good. The doctor's recommending it. So I went to the, and I should have known, if it's not by prescription, not going to be that good. So I went to the CVS pharmacy and I found the calamine. And I applied it with a cotton ball as it recommended. And you know what it did? Big goose egg. Nothing. Waste of money, waste of time, false hope, which annoys me. False hope always annoys me. So next time I went to a doctor and they recommended calamine, I said no. I go, that doesn't even have a placebo effect, so that's not going to work. But anyway, when I went that time, he didn't recommend calamine or cameline, or he gave me the prescription cream. And I am a big advocate for that cream. As a matter of fact, anybody who gets poison ivy or any kind of rash, I always tell them the name of the cream, and I tell them what it did for me and how fast it worked. It worked so fast that the following day I had class pictures, or that the next day where I went back to school, I had class pictures. And I actually got up a few times during the night to apply a whole new layer of this stuff. I'd wash it off, the old stuff, and then I'd put a new layer on. And when I got up in the morning, besides being slightly red, it went away. So I said, hey, there is something. Now, why they need to have that as a prescription, well, that's beyond me. I mean, what are you going to do with that? Overdose? Oh, I put too much of that cream on, and, and I got sick. Well, you know, there's other things that are over the counter that can get you sick as well, but I don't see that being by prescription. So anyway, I was happy to find out that there actually was something you can do, because I suffered for like 7 years in a row with poison ivy. And then all of a sudden, I stopped. I wasn't getting poison ivy anymore, even though I was doing the exact same things. I was going to the exact same places, running in the forest, and, you know, in the springtime, summertime, and I wasn't getting it anymore. So I don't know if my body just said, we're not going to respond to that. Because, you know, there was a period, though, for like 7 years, from like, say, the age of, I don't know, 10, 11 to 17, 18, around there, where every year I would get hit hard. And then it just went away. So I don't know what the explanation is, but, you know, it's not like I changed my habits and lived inside a plastic bubble. I didn't do that. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.